Well, here we are with a new series of live sessions that we're kicking off. And what we'll be doing is talking to female entrepreneurs and getting their story. Today, in Wallet to Wealth. So we're going to live stream this. So any messages in Wallet to Wealth cannot be seen on my personal page. So feel free to write and ask anything. Only the ladies in Wallet to Wealth will be able to see those messages. So that's a safe place. Today, we're going to talk about, we're going to carry on with our money scarcity discussion, and we're going to talk about intergenerational trauma. So here that I have today, so this will be interesting because I have my daughter, Brittany Hammond, and talking about intergenerational trauma could be dicey. We have not rehearsed this. I literally just sent her 3 questions 5 minutes ago. So we are going live with this, and we'll see where it goes. So welcome, Brittany.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So Brittany is in Paris, in France, and she's been living in France for over 10 years. And she owns her own business. Did you want to give us a 30-second shot of your business?
Yeah, well, firstly, I wanted to just touch on what you were saying, because I told you I was nervous to go live about this because my mom and I have not had this conversation before. So I run a production company and I help my clients with their personal branding, sharing their message, speaking their voice, how to show up on social media, video content. So really helping people express themselves. And that has really expanded in the past year of understanding not just the messages we put out there, but the messages that we have internalized as well.
Yeah, you were a huge eye opener for me with opening up a message I have, but we'll save that for a future talk. So anyhow, first question is, and I think that anybody really should ask themselves this question also, what were the messages you received around money when you were a child and all the way through growing up?
Yeah. So I received a lot of positive messages around saving money and knowing how to manage money. And it's funny because there's like this, I thought it was innate knowledge, but they're just money management things that I've picked up from just hearing over dinner table conversations. And so in some ways, like managing money has come very natural to me, but there's also a level of scarcity and my own limiting beliefs. And I'm going to just share a few of them, and I'm going to try and untangle the thought process, because as kids, we're sponges and we can pick up information and we can attach a meaning to something. And so I always say this to my mom or to anyone in my work, that it's never about blaming the messenger, because we also can interpret things. So one of the beliefs I had growing up was it wasn't safe to make money. Something that my mom would tell me growing up, and she probably didn't do this purposely, but she would tell me how expensive I was. And that translated for me growing up. Of course, when you run a business, you're not just getting a paycheck. So you have to learn how to ask for money. So can you see, for the listeners, how when you're being told that you're expensive and then you're scared to price yourself because you're like, oh my God, I'm asking for money. And it creates all this nervous system trauma in me. And that really, it's still something I have to work through now, because I still fear asking my clients for money. I fear asking for the sale, but that's also linked to my own self-worth issues. And this is something I wanted to touch on. And I'm just reading my notes here, because there's 3 different ways spiritually that we can be compensated and make money. And one of them is through labor. So like our hands. So if we're building something, another way we can be compensated is through our intellect. So through our knowledge. And I didn't have any problem being paid when I was working as a salary worker, but I had a lot of self-worth issues around being compensated for my God-given talents and my intellect. Like there was a disconnect in my brain of, I have all this education and like I can be paid for this. And I oftentimes didn't value my knowledge, because for me, some of these things came really easily to me. So I was like, well, how can I charge for this if it's just natural? So yeah, that's a few of them. I can dive into more, but
Well, you know what? And I understand that too. Like it totally makes sense what you're saying, because as a parent, like children are always asking for, can I get this and this and this and this and this? And the kids become, very expensive. And so the message is we have to be very careful when we're talking to our children, because of course now I can see why you had that. And I know I spent a few years hammering you to, you've got to charge more money for your service because what you do is phenomenal. So it's good that you're making that connection, but it sounds like there was the value, the self-worth and the value that you were not feeling worthy. And that's a really bad place to come from. And I think a lot of us come from that. So just to keep going on with that question, so what message did you carry into your adult life beyond what you just explained?
Well, I think so. I first ran a business with College Pro window cleaners, which again, that goes to the labor, the hands-on. And I was 18. I was very young, and I didn't have the not maturity, but the it was a lot of stress and pressure as an 18-year-old to have 3 full-time employees and have all these 600 customers and all this responsibility. And so I went into burnout, and that's where the belief of it's not safe to make money, because every time I made money, I was getting myself into burnout. And as someone who had experienced trauma growing up, my nervous system, we have 3 different reactions. Mine was freeze. So my mom and my sister had the, so there's fight, flight, and freeze. And my mom and my sister had fight, and I had the freeze reaction. So anytime they would try and help me, it's not that their advice didn't apply to me, but I had a different way of functioning, and I would beat up on myself about that. So when I started this business, Untamed, in 2014, now I'm not selling with my hands, I'm selling my brain. So I have to make that switch. And I also, when I would have high sales in a month, the same thing would happen. I wouldn't manage my time. I was undercharging. And so when you have a belief, then your reality shows you that belief. So every time I made money, there was always some consequence. I was always like getting overwhelmed, undercharging, negative client experiences. And it was a cycle that went on for like 5 years until I realized I have to raise my prices, charge accordingly. And now I'm in the phase where I'm still every day trying to rewire my subconscious brain and mind to value the work that I do, because if anyone listening can relate to this, again, when something is so natural to you, it just feels so weird because there's another belief system is I thought it has to be hard to make money. I have to work hard and I have to suffer. And if it comes too easily, then I don't deserve to make money. There's another way to untangle a belief.
Yeah. So, and the thing is that what I noticed is once you started to raise prices, and your prices are still too low, but once you started to raise prices, you actually developed a much more serious and dedicated client base. So the work that you do, I mean, I see people charge, 10 times more than what you do, and they don't come out with the result because you have the ability to get deep into somebody's story to be able to bring that story out. Everybody is selling everything today, and we don't want to buy anything. But when you hear a story that really resonates, that draws us in, and that's why you've been very successful with the marketing packages that you do put together for people. So so that dark time that I did see you go through, because I do believe we can all go through that dark time of feeling like that we don't have a lot of worth. like you've really come out onto another side that's phenomenal, and you've created this podcast that some of us have heard, and we're just blown away by it. And one of the things that you were talking about was I call it intergenerational trauma, and I think it's really important to talk about this. So tell us about that.
Yeah, well, this has been a big part of my development and journey this year, is understanding what the mother wound is. And when I say mother wound, it's the feminine wound, and it's the belief systems that are passed on from generation to generation. So it's interesting when I hear the baby boomers talk about how for them, they grew up thinking they were a second class citizen. It was only in the I don't know, what was it, like the 20s, when women finally had the right to vote, finally had the right to make money. Like I didn't grow up with that belief system. Like I've always believed that I'm equal.
Sorry, it wasn't the baby boomers, it's the women that thought that they were not equal.
Yeah. And so we kind of have to look at like the generation of beliefs that are passed on. So if we look at our parents or our grandparents, great grandparents, like look at the climate they were growing up in: wars, depressions, like slavery, horrific events in life. So you look at what our grandparents went through and the belief systems they had, then of course these are going to be passed down. One thing I learned this week from my mom's baba, so my mom's grandma, is that she had paranoia. And I have paranoia. And these are things that it's not spoken, it's in our nervous system, it gets passed down. And I have always had paranoia around like my money being taken away, and learning how my ancestors, fled from the Ukraine, fearing, if anyone is familiar with communism, like the government would take your money away. So these little subtle things get passed on to us. And it's really interesting to take stock of what you learned. And this is where you can become sovereign. And here's a little side joke. My mom's company is Sovereign Wealth, and I say I'm Sovereign Expression. Like how you can become sovereign is looking at the beliefs and being like, is this true for me? And if it's not, you get to set yourself free. And it doesn't mean you're betraying your family or your ancestors because you don't carry that belief. You're actually healing them. I did a really powerful healing this week with your Baba, and I pictured myself walking her back to her house in the Ukraine. She's gone, but she could be there watching me. Like this work we're doing today can be healing for our entire lineage.
That is so neat. Well, we have had a saying in the family where we have grandpa disease, because just a background for people that don't know, my father was born in 1923 in the Ukraine, and he didn't come to Canada until close to the Depression starting in 1929. So when he arrived in Canada, they didn't speak any English, and my Baba never spoke English, but they fled because people were being slaughtered, and the Jews were being slaughtered, all the business owners were being slaughtered, and they were business owners. So many people, this is long before the Holocaust started, but the scarcity that he had in his mind and what he taught me, like which he didn't mean to teach it, but I picked that up, and then I passed that on to you and your sister, and we really had that mindset of scarcity, but we had that fierce, ferocious desire to work and create. So that was a good thing. So okay, well, we're at our time. Is there anything that you just wanted to tell us before we wrap up?
I don't know.
Tell us how you got out of that black moment where you just couldn't see your way out of that box back a few years ago.
I think you hit a point where the pain, like for me, I had this, it didn't feel safe for me to show up. And it hit this point in my business where I couldn't afford to battle with my personal demons every day. Like I didn't have that luxury, and that has a big thing to do with this apartment that I'm in. Without going in the details, I had a separation, and I wanted to stay in this apartment, and to be able to afford the rent, I had to start making more money. And that means every day when I was self-sabotaging and not putting myself out there, I couldn't afford to I didn't have the luxury anymore of playing small. That was in 2019 when I had a huge shift, and that's how I pushed myself through it.
I love that. I didn't have the luxury of playing small. Let's end on that note. So for everyone that's listening on both channels, and we'll replay this later on YouTube and LinkedIn, yeah, we can afford the luxury to play small. Why are some people hugely successful, and why are some people not? It's the mindset. It's totally the mindset. So tune in. There'll be another show this Friday at noon, and then we'll start with Monday, and we'll be broadcasting our speaker from Monday, a special, very special lady. So thank you for everybody for joining us. And I see there's lots of questions. We'll catch up to them after. And thank you, Brittany. This was great.
Amazing.
We'll see you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Bye-bye.